And actually, we were taking bets on how many people would be here on a beautiful day like this. For me, it seems like it's the first day of summer. And so thank you all for coming. You got Sean Brown to my left, Town Administrator for the Town of Middletown. And to my right, Jessica Goodall from Woolport Strategies. I think Strategies goes with it, or is it just Woolport? Just Woolport. And David Sturts from Cooperative Strategies. They will be leading the discussion. I think the idea is a short PowerPoint first. And then, actually, Jessica, I'm just going to let you explain the format, but if you could welcome them, that would be great. Thank you. Oh, Sean, you want to say that? Too late. Too late.
Too late. I would just like to say thank you to everybody. I know you've given up a beautiful afternoon, but this is where all the work begins for this project. Joe and I and others have done a lot of work to put legislation together and put a team together to explore this opportunity. But it's really the input from the community that's going to make this happen or not happen. I really hope that today we begin to capture some ideas about what not only you envision for this, but education overall for our community, as well as how we move economic development forward for both Middletown and Newport. So again, thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to a discussion that will continue for months to come. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. It's really great to see you guys here, and I flew in from Dallas, so I'm really enjoying the not 113-degree weather today. So Joe said, I'm Jessica Goodell. I'm a consultant from Woolport. And you'll hear from me and David a lot tonight, but hopefully, mostly we'll be hearing from you. The idea is not for the consultants to get up here and talk to you all afternoon. So we'll do some really quick introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about what is regionalization, what does this mean, so we all are working from the same page. A few of the benefits. What's the goal of this afternoon? David will get into that. Potential cost savings. We're all here to kind of find out what we can save money and how we can use that to benefit the students and the communities here in Middletown and Rhode Island. And then we're going to break up into some small groups and have some discussions. And most of the time you're going to be spending working in those small groups and talking amongst yourselves. And then we'll report out so the whole room can hear from each table about what you found. So we know I'm Jessica. I am a director at Woolport, and I run the portfolio optimization group. So we do a lot with helping people maintain their facilities better, utilize their facilities better, things like that. I actually did a statewide facility condition assessment for all the schools in Rhode Island back in 2016, 2017. So that's sort of how we ended up here, I guess, through those relationships. David Sturts is an executive director at Cooperative Strategies, and he's a K-12 master planner, so he works across the country with school districts, helping them, do better things for their schools and meet their goals and objectives while, helping them do that. We have a steering committee that's been put together from both of your communities, which include superintendents, town managers, school building committees. Do you guys want to stand up and kind of raise your hands to show the representation of who's here tonight? And so we've been on the phone a lot over the last month to 6 weeks prepping for this and in the future of where we can take your schools and your students. And we've also been working with the Annenberg Institute and seeing how they can help us. They really know the community. I know they're well respected. Jonathan's here this afternoon. Did you want to say a few words, Jonathan? Do you want to bring him the... They've been, so we're leveraging their knowledge about the community, education here in Rhode Island. Also, they're really well equipped with the finances, and Jonathan's specialty is kind of, I think that one will work too. Yep. So they've been working with us to make sure we don't say anything too dumb, I think.
Oh, that hasn't been the case whatsoever. So my name is Professor Jonathan Collins. I'm an assistant professor of education and public policy at Brown University and a research affiliate with the Annenberg Institute. And I have been working closely with the team here around the sort of public engagement work here. And I just want to emphasize how important it is that you're here. It always makes me think about this French philosopher, Alexis de Tocqueville, who in the mid-1800s, he travels to the US for the first time and starts to document everything he sees. And he hates everything that's happening with American democracy, but the one thing that he turns to and highlights and writes home about literally is associations. When people are meeting in these kinds of environments, convening, having discourse, and really identifying and solving localized problems, this was what de Tocqueville wrote back as the strength of American democracy. It wasn't about the politicians and elected officials. It wasn't about having leaders who are Ivy League educated. It was about everyday folks coming together and being able to work through these kinds of discourses that you're working through today. So I'm just personally excited that you're here, glad to be a part of this process, and I'll be hanging around, taking notes, observing, and just enjoying the process. And the cookies, they were really good if you haven't gotten any.
Thank you. Oh, here, let's just set it up. So what is regionalization? You guys are all here for a reason, and I suspect you have a little idea of what we're doing here today. And we have this neat little graphic, and really the purpose is to merge your two schools, and the legislation on the table is to do that administratively, so nobody's pushing over schools or getting rid of anything just yet. So to combine the schools and find the best way to use your resources is really the ultimate goal here. And I really want to emphasize that we're very early on in the process. So we're here today to start gathering information from the community. We have meetings in July and August as well. There will be a question on the ballot to approve this by the community. So we're really working towards that goal to get this approved in November. And that'll be done through your feedback. And ultimately, this will set the platform for voting in a regional school committee. So again, we're early on in the phase of all of this. Assuming it gets approved in November of next year, you'll vote for a new school committee, and those will be the folks really making the day-to-day decisions around what this new regionalized school district may look like in the future. So we're here to get ideas and set that platform for what it could look like and what the community really wants out of this to help them make those decisions. So the first day of business of this new school district wouldn't be until July of 2024. So it's a couple of years away from anything really happening. And ultimately, we're here to help the students. I mean, that's really what the goal of this project is. We're here to benefit the students. So with a little extra money, that means you can reinvest that back into your schools. So the ideas are hopefully to have some expanded career tech opportunities, universal pre-K across all of the schools, all the communities. You can get increased financial benefits from the state. And that's a big benefit to regionalizing, is getting those incentives from the state to help pay for your new schools or renovation projects. And that saved money can go back into the community instead of into building bricks and mortar. And then also, if you get new schools, you're going to get new energy efficient schools. So that means you're also saving money and you're helping the environment and all of those good things. So I'm going to hand it over to David, and he's here to tell you a little bit about more of this process and some of the work he's been doing as well.
Thank you. Again, David Stearns, Cooperative Strategies. I'll spend about 10 minutes or less on this next portion, and then we're going to get into small group discussion. But just wanted to set the frame of what exactly are Jessica and my teams doing as to support this process. Part of what we're doing is we're looking at case studies. This is not the first time this has happened across the country. What can we learn from it? As with any venture, it can be done well and it can be done not so well. So let's study that. Let's see what's done well. Let's see what hasn't done well sometimes, and let's set up some considerations for how to do this optimally for the communities. That's the goal of one portion here, is looking at some case studies. We're also looking into the operations of both current districts, into the finance structure, expenses, and so forth, and the accounting process is set up so we can do a good apples-to-apples comparisons. We can look at, as well at the academic offerings and visions and plans there, and look at what are some opportunities to support all of that, and as we have a bigger pie here to work with in looking at a joint regionalized district. And knowing, as Jessica said, one of the big factors here is an increase in funding from the state to make a significant contribution to your building portfolio, setting up you for the next 50 to 100 years with the outcomes of that plan. And then of course, to seek input along the way, and we're doing that in 3 sprints of activity. Here in June, as we are getting started, we don't have the case studies done, we don't have the financial studies done, the academic studies done. Those are started, we're getting started on that. That's in the works at the moment. We'll have results from those initial studies in our July meetings. And then, so the structure is here in June, it's looking ahead, and the questions that we're going to ask you in small groups to work on consensus towards are, what do you hope to achieve for your communities and your students? That's the broad question, and its variations on the theme. So what do we solve for from your perspective, and what do we caution against from your perspective? That's essentially the goal for tonight. We'll work in small groups. In July, we're going to come back and report out what we heard about what you're saying, those end goals and state should be, with results from these studies that we have, the financial studies, the academic studies, and the case studies. And then we can have a dialogue. Here's information that we have in data. Here's where we want to go. How do we get from A to B? And then in August, we're going to come back and we're going to have some refined considerations about how to get from A to B based upon data and your feedback. That's the flow. And we're going to have a nice monthly cadence of meetings here. Okay. So we are looking at district management, program management, business operations, general administration, going from 2 to 1. What are some suggested, some considerations for how to do that well? What we're not doing is we're not going to hand over an exact blueprint and say, thou shalt follow this blueprint in a regionalized district. That's not our place. We're talking July of 24 would be the first date. Our role is to fact find and provide good guidance and considerations along the journey. I think that's the most prudent thing to do at this stage. Operations, your building upkeep, your utilities, your maintenance, transportation, operating all the buildings. What are some opportunities and considerations for that? Data and technology management. What happens overall that we can leverage a little bit more scale? Not a ton more scale, but a little bit more scale to bring to the classroom. So in essence, what you look at in this this bar graph here, rather, is how state reimbursement works. What you have is a base share to all of the districts across the state, 37, am I correct? 35? That was a few years ago when I did this, 37. You have your base share, and then there's these additional bonuses that can go on top for energy efficiency processes when you're going from like 2 to 3 small schools that are located close together to like 1 to 2. There's a bonus there in building new. In educational enhancements, there's incentive, health and safety incentives, and then there's this big chunk on top, a regionalization bonus, 28%. So we're talking about a potential of up to 8 cents on, 80 cents out of a dollar being paid for capital projects by the state, for whereas your current base share is far lower. But that has an expiration date on it. And so this is a seize the moment kind of incentive to take advantage of a regionalization bonus, because over time your total incentives actually go down. And so part of what we're looking at in the considerations would be, given the state of the buildings and the current plans for their rehabilitation, renovation, and so forth, what might be some things to consider to make those investments now for the foreseeable future for your capital buildings. In short, rebuild versus renovate, or major reno versus fix stuff up. That's the short version. Operating expenses, lots of data points wiggling around here, but the main point is when you look at comparison districts in Rhode Island to what the comparison districts are that would be of similar size to a combined Newport, Middletown, there are significant operational savings that emerge in difference between what those districts spend on the day-to-day operations for their districts versus what a regionalized district would be. The exact numbers and all that would be worked out as if the voters approve this in November. Moving forward, how that happens, our role in this process is to look at where the probable efficiencies could be gained, given where there are perceived redundancies and inefficiencies if you looked at the two systems as one instead of two. That's what we're doing right now. We have a former CFO from a large district working on that and a former superintendent working on the academic considerations to merge as well. So again, looking at all of that, have more results for you in July. Focused on the student. That's the end state here. What is the best way to maximize the educational opportunities for the student? We have more dollars because we're more efficient. That's more dollars in the classroom. You can rebuild a school rather than just renovate it. Well, then how do we make that the best benefit? Because when you rebuild, you can rebuild with certain programs in mind that you don't have. You can rebuild for what you want rather than simply fix what you have in some cases. And so that's where part of the opportunities we want to get out tonight is what should we solve for from your perspective. So I'm about done with this part, and then we're going to get into small group conversations. We leave significant time for this, an hour. And the idea is that what we would like is for you to sit at a table, and ideally there's at least two people you didn't know walking into this room, sitting at your table, at least two. Part of the idea is if you're sitting with the table of everybody you know, you've already had these conversations. So we want to diversify a little bit, and we're not in kindergarten, so we're not going to count by 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you would self-select, we have easels, we have flip charts. What we're going to ask you to do is to answer these 3 questions as a group. Can you come to a consensus response? It doesn't have to be a single sentence. It can have 12 bullet points if you need it to. What do you hope could be gained for students in this process? Number 1. Number 2, what additional academic and extracurricular programs are most important to you? Answer both, please, academic and extracurricular. And of course, that has capital implications as well as operating, what you could build for to accommodate. And what impacts on students' education should be considered? That is a very broad question. Here's the rubber meets the road of it. What do you hope for? What do you fear? What do you want? What do you want to avoid when it comes to impact on student education? And so, try as you can to come to consensus as a table on these 3 questions. When we are done, we are going to report out by the table. We'll pass the mic, and we'll ask somebody who was voluntold by somebody else at the table because rarely people volunteer with your table, to just give a synopsis of your conversation, 60 seconds or so. And that's it. And then we'll collect the flip charts. You may take pictures of them. We'll put up on the walls. We'll take pictures of them. And that will be part of our what are solving to, part of our considerations when we have the data to back up to it. Do we have any questions about sort of the process here and what we're doing? Okay. Undoubtedly, you also walked in here with some technical questions and that kind of thing that you would like answers to from somebody, either one of our city managers or superintendents or something of that like. What we'll do is we can go around in our small groups, and we're going to meander around, start to pick up and write down some questions, and then at the end, we can sort of look to address the questions, and you can let us know if we captured them or not. Okay? So I've got almost 4. Let's look to get in groups of 6 would be a nice upper maximum. 4 to 6 is a good group. Please find some buddies you don't currently know. And we'll be around with the flip charts, and we'll talk back with you in about 5. Middletown and the reimbursement having a significant impact. And tell me again how this would work for Newport, because the Rogers Schools already funds are there and encumbered, and how do we take care of that? So I was going to pass it on to Joe Chauncey, that they could sort of address broadly those big questions. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the mic, get your volunteers ready, and I'm going to walk around, hand the mics to you all, and ask if you could give about a minute or so synopsis of your conversation. Joe?
Thanks, David. I guess the why we're here, I'm going to jump over that for a moment. I listened to some of the conversations at the table, various tables, and I do note there's a recurring theme. Primarily I'll call you guys table number 1 there in the back. In the legislation, I'm going to use the corollary of the legislation. In the legislation that hopefully will pass in the General Assembly in the next few days, there's a provision in there about what happens if a respective school district has a surplus. What happens to that money? It's a fair question. We've addressed it in the legislation. If we didn't address it in the legislation, that surplus money should simply lapse back to the municipality, the side of the ledger that I represent and the city council represents. But we addressed it in the legislation that says if your school district, at the end of this spectrum, when regionalization is about to happen on July 1, 2024, if your school district has a surplus, that money must be circulated back into the school district for educational opportunities for the students of those respective school districts. So if Newport has that's a $5 million surplus, that money gets circulated back into the regional school district for opportunities for Newport children. Same goes for Middletown. So the question has come up, what happens with regard to the savings that may inure to the respective municipalities as a result of regionalization? Not only within the context of the base rate and the bonuses and the regionalization bonus, the 80.5%, but in the context of the 67%. The question was asked, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'll paraphrase it. How can we guarantee that money, or some of that money, I'll say some of that money, being recirculated back into the school district for educational opportunities? My initial response was, based upon my history and my knowledge, was that, of course, I can't make any guarantees. One government can't bind another government. That's state law. That's the case law. I've tried 1 million of those cases when I was an attorney. However, the thing that always trumps me on that opinion is if there were a special legislative act passed which guaranteed, let's say, the savings from regionalization, or some of those savings had to be recirculated back into the regional school district for educational opportunities, then I think that is a reasonable and legitimate path forward. Now, I say this without consulting with my finance director, who is my guru at City Hall, or other financial people that we have retained to help us out with bond issues and the like, nor have I discussed this with the City Council. However, based upon my experience, and it's long-standing experience with the City of Newport, a lot of years, and a lot of years reviewing case law and various statutes and things like that, and going to various courts and things like that to argue on behalf of the municipality, I could see that path, that legislative path, as a reasonable path forward, targeted to this new regional school district. And the magic of that is that more often than not, and Penny Billington Hunt, right? I always get that last name, sorry about that, I knew it was Penny Billington. We just had a special act for the City of Newport passed on taxation that some other communities don't have. It's always easier to address the respective and get through the General Assembly those special acts targeted to your own district or municipality than it is overall. Overall for the entire state, because when you get the entire state involved, of course, I get people from Central Falls, Woonsocket, and Providence, and Lincoln, and everyone else opining on it. Otherwise, they don't care. So I could see legitimately a legislative path forward to try to address that issue. That it's a great question that makes sense in terms of the recirculation of funds. Certainly makes sense to me. Whether it makes sense to the city council, that's a whole other issue, but it's something that I'm sure they would love to discuss, and it's something that I need to, in my own mind, thresh out a little bit more, but it seems on its face to be a legitimate possibility. So I guess, Sean, do you have anything to add to that? This happens all the time, doesn't it?
No, I agree with Joe said, and just as we talked about this with David when he brought the issue over, I think I just want to reiterate that, the question number 2, especially, that's, I think, why we've started this entire process. We didn't want to make our educational systems house poor, for lack of a better description. That's how this discussion started. We can certainly borrow money and build buildings, but when Joe and when we sat down with Mayor Napolitano and Council President Rodrigues, the driving factor behind this was that it wasn't enough to build the buildings. We also needed to save money to put resources back into the classroom. That's teachers, that's administrators, and with the superintendent from Newport, and I've mentioned curriculum development. It's also having the manipulatives and the other stuff that teachers need in the classroom to actually educate kids. And I think from my perspective, the way this has moved forward and why I've been working so hard on it is that the savings that we realize from these building projects and the savings that we realize from building a better administration goes directly into the classroom for our children. And it also gives the teachers the space and tools to provide education to do their jobs, hopefully in the most enriching way possible. So I think that's the other side of what Joe's got the mechanics, but I think that's where our hearts are in this entire process.
All right. Thank you, Sean and Joe, for addressing that. So in our small group conversation synopsis here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the mic around. I can hold it up. I'll be Vanna. I'll hold up the dating myself. Hold that one up. And if you could just take about a minute or two, give the synopsis of your conversation. As I asked one group, where did we come to consensus quickly? Where did we have some sticky points? That's all good information to have. And then we're going to take pictures of all these, record them, and you'll see that's reflected in our July meeting. So I'm going to start here and go clockwise around the room. We'll end here. That way, if you needed more than 1 minute, you can keep working on your... Okay, all right. So we'll start here, and I'll hold it up for you, and give us your synopsis, if you don't mind.
I don't know what you wrote. I have to look at it. So we had a very robust conversation around the 3 questions, but so what happens if it doesn't go well? Can we on-merge? Does that put 80% reimbursement at risk for completed projects? Question 1, better special education program, better L programming. Can you divert the $30 million? That was addressed, I think, in Joe and Sean's. And how are we guaranteed that annual savings will stay in the annual budget and be reallocated to improve programming? So our big conversation was, to Joe's point, how is that, what does that look like? That to Joe's point, that the money stays and increases the educational opportunities for the students of the merged school districts.
Okay.
I think that captures our conversation.
Well, the other thing is, what do we gain by doing baby steps? Is there a gain in doing it that way?
Okay.
The baby.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be one of those sticky ones, maybe, right? Do we rip the Band-Aid off, to use that analogy, or do we baby steps to use that analogy? And right. And to paraphrase and correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the question is, what guardrails do we put around this to make sure it's done well? I mean, because that ultimately it's going to be done by human beings.
Well, I think
right.
The point about the baby steps approach was just to be clear that this is not going to be done by November. So when we go to the polls in November, we're voting based upon some folks hope that this will be a baby step toward more regionalization. But that my concern is that that's a hope, not a guarantee. We won't know by November many of these aspirations that we have.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave this one here. Thank you. And here. Yeah, that's fine. I'll hold up. Keep going. Yeah.
Hello. Ooh, God, I don't need this. Hello, Chloe. You hold it. This is Chloe. She's a student at MHS. I'm a teacher at the middle school. Only student in the room, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Props for Chloe. And she just got off stage last week for her theater program. So what am I starting with? What would you hope to be gained for students? So we hope that throughout this whole process, we have heard a lot about numbers. We talk about students. I'm going to be very candid. I feel when it's convenient for the conversation, and a lot of this has been driven by numbers. So we hope that, like, first and foremost, we really hope it's about people, and we hope to gain people in the process. We hope to gain student support staff, because in the end, people is what really helps the students. So student support staff to support SEL, smaller class sizes, more staff, and consistency with retaining staff, interventionists, because with all that then comes opportunities in rigor to supply more AP classes between districts, more competition. We're hoping that if it is regionalized, like with a larger population, that there's more available for those kids. But I'd say the major consensus at our table was equity between the districts, making sure money's going to where it's supposed to be, making sure that there's no redlining in the districts. Chloe, anything on this one? Yours is more on the second and third one, I believe.
It was mostly on the second and third one. Yeah.
Thank you, Vanna. All right, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. All right, so, well, I think that a big one is, like, we need a lot more funding to the arts, because while, of course, it's, like, important for, like, just sports and stuff, sports have a lot of funding, but as somebody who, I'm not really a sports person, like, at all, and it's really disheartening when I see, like, so much, like, money and so much, like, support in general just going to, like, sports and stuff. And there's not a lot of, like, funding or, like, support for anything art related. Like with the theater, we don't get a lot to do, like, cooler productions. Like we just did Little Shop of Horrors, but that was only because Rogers was doing Little Shop of Horrors. That was a combined thing because they're tearing the auditorium at Rogers down, and they did that final big, like, Little Shop of Horrors production because of that. It was like a final, thing, and I think a lot more funding for that. And then, like, math labs and lit labs. I was saying how I feel like there's not enough, like, one-on-one with a lot of teachers. Like, I'm not very good at math, and I just, like, failed a final, and there was nothing anybody could do. I had been struggling pretty much the entire year in math because it's one teacher, and he stands in front, and he goes up to the board, and he's like, okay, guys, and write this on your study guide, write this on your study guide. Okay, but I'm not learning when I'm just writing down what you're writing down. I don't know how to do this. If you take this study guide away from me, I can't do the math, but there's nobody there to help me. And then the transportation for after-school activities. Well, we were talking about transportation too, just that if it's all combined, there will be a lot of, like, people in one, like, bus. I was saying, somebody over here was saying that there was, what were you saying about there was going to be, like,
Sixth graders don't have busing for most of them, so our kids can't participate in it because they don't have a way to get home.
you want to?
that's it for that one. Good job, Chloe. Okay, so then our last one, the impacts on students that should be considered. We had a lot of conversation. I don't even know how much of it made it to the paper. But first and foremost, our big thing was we don't want to cause any more harm. Like, these kids have been through so much in the last few years, and I feel like at the end of this year, we're all maybe starting to take a breather, and now everything's going to change. Everything that is like safe to them, the school they go to, the teachers that are there when they show up, like that might all be changing with this. So change is hard for everyone, but like the kids don't always have the support there that they need to go through those changes, and that's what we're hoping for. We are concerned about like safety overall, whether that's safety when you walk into a building. We know safety is a big thing all over right now, but even just in terms of like staffing. Chloe was saying that there's been a lot of times this year she's had to sit in a cafeteria just because of shortages, and some of that may be because there's a lot of staff out due to I don't want to say the word. But, even when we have retirements, like that staff isn't always, rehired. But then even with regionalization, we've seen a lot back and forth, and we know this is very early in the process, but we do want the separate communities to maintain a sense of community, but we also would like a sense of unity between the two, and it's hard to how are we going to maintain our senses of separate communities while combining as one? And I know that's something that's been discussed already, but we're seeing that a lot. I was not done, David. Thank you. There's no hook. I was not told I had a time. There's no music. And then we were also, yes, this is focused on students, and we very much want it to stay focused on students and not numbers. We know the numbers are needed to support the students, but still, let's focus on the students. But part of the students is the other people around the students. So teacher morale and security trickles down to the kids. They are the ones that spend every day with us, and I think that is something that gets often overlooked in these discussions about how we're going to make the education best for kids. Also, what is communication between districts going to look like? I don't even know what to say more on that. Just what will that look like? Nobody knows. And then visibility, I think everybody gets really busy. Are we going to see the people that are elected in our buildings? Now that we're between two districts, it's hard to divide people. If we're combining people into one job, how are they going to get to all these places? And then transportation again. Yeah.
Well, just with transportation, that we'll need there will have to be a lot of buses and stuff, because I was saying when I used to go to God Day, there were so many people on some of the buses that I would have to sit on the floor, and that was not cool. Yeah, every day it was bad. There would be 3 people to seat, and I'd be on the floor. So
speak to that. And that's obviously never the intention, Chloe. Nobody planned for that to happen. But, these are some of the things. We have these awesome meetings, and that's great, and we love a forum. But then in practice, years down the road, what is this going to look like in those things? Year 1, it looks great. What's it like by year 3? Your kid's sitting on the floor of the bus.
Thank you. All right. Who's the lucky one here? You are. All right.
We should go over here so they can see. Oh. Okay, so the first question on what we hope would be gained for the students. Equal opportunities. We hope that there are more opportunities for the advanced achievers and for the diverse learners. We hope that it creates a culture of academic excellence. We hope there's equity. I think we all here hope that. We would hope that there's more community engagement. What we mean is we hope that both school districts would be more involved with the schools and with the students. We hope that the students learn from each other through their cultural experiences, the diversity that we offer. We hope that that really goes across everything. And we hope that there's more resources for teachers, because if there's more resources for teachers, like good professional development, payment for out-of-school engagement, then that will be, crossover to the students. They'll gain from that. And lastly, we hope that our we have community partnerships. We have a ton of them in Newport. We love them, and we hope that they expand our Mindful Learning. Okay, so I wanted to just say overall, we think that this plan needs a lot more involvement from the students. Okay. Second, what additional academic programs? We had an easy time with this one. In fact, we wondered why we needed regionalization to do this, but we want more AP classes. We are hoping that we have world languages. Mine, I taught French for a long time. We definitely want more STEM, including after-school activities. We hope that we could have more financial literacy. We hope that there's more academic support. We hope that there's more resources for teachers. We want more civic engagement. We want the teachers, the students to be involved in their communities more. We hope that there's more specialized programs to support special education students rather. And we hope that there's more access to psychological support. And we hope that whatever savings, like we were talking about, that money, we actually think that money would be very beneficial if it went towards programs outside the schools, like towards robotics and music and sports, where the two communities combine now, but we hope that that would get stronger. So, like I say, we thought this could happen now, but... Okay, the last one. As we kept writing, our translation was, what are our fears? It kept growing and growing and growing. So I'll explain them a little bit. Okay, first is, we're a little bit concerned that if we go to vote in November, that there's a bit of misinformation about this vote. This is about combining the administration, and we don't know, like, if the voters go in November, are they going to think it's like all this wonderful combination of schools and programs and things? It may happen, but that's not what we're voting on. And we have a fear about this kind of going overboard on the information here. We have a fear that our students' needs may not be met should the other district have control. Like, if one district really wants a lot of support for the kids and the other district says, nah, we don't have enough money for that or something like that. We're fearing about that. We fear losing existing programs. We fear losing our partnerships. The community, like I know Newport, we have great partnerships with Still Newport, Tennis Hall of Fame and things like that. And we fear we may lose that because maybe they can't afford to go to two districts, or maybe they don't want to. So there's kind of a fear about that. We don't know how Title I is going to be impacted. A little bit concerned about that. We're concerned that the only goal here is cost savings, and it's not really focused on the students right now. I mean, I hope later, but it isn't right now. We're concerned about the negative impact on community engagement. It's kind of the opposite. It was to the statement that you made that Newport has a strong community, Middletown has a strong community, and we're afraid that how do you combine that and get the unity thing too? I agree with that. We are a little bit concerned about loss of equal opportunity, further segregating our students. We're concerned about increased racism and classism. And we're concerned about the over-involvement of RIDE. And we're also concerned about the lack of transparency that's kind of been happening a little bit. And we're overall concerned that throwing money at this will not get us any positive change. So we have a lot of fear.
All right, thank you. So in respect of time, we are, if you could sort of give the mountaintops, if you will, of anything that you think from your table you want to emphasize, that you're hearing from other tables that you want to make sure you know is echoed here, and any of the sort of highlight any of the differences, and we'll see if we can wrap up. Take about 5 to 10 more minutes.
I'll try to be brief. So some of the student gains that we want to see are, of course, better school performance, higher graduation rate, better test scores, but also better student well-being. Students should feel like school is a home away from home. They should feel nurtured. They should be excited and enthusiastic about the curriculum. And also, that includes mental health support, that includes English language learners and students who have special needs. And some of the ways to do that are through better extracurriculars and academics. And we also agree that we need a better performing arts and visual arts programs, and that can also be used to reinforce the academics. And overall, we just thought that students would benefit by having a broader perspective and more of a solid liberal arts education focusing on writing skills, communication skills, and soft skills. So we didn't talk about technical skills, but I think what we came to agree on was that if we focused on very basic skills, then kids can learn whatever they want to learn. With that said, still keeping the vocational and technical schools that are in place. So some of our concerns were Newport students' ability to access the desired programs, and that has to do with equity. Are we going to achieve equity in a combined school district, if we have 2 separate buildings? So that was one of the concerns. We would hope that all students would be able to appreciate greater diversity in the student body, and we think that the long-term goal should be integration of the student body, which is not going to be happening right away, of course. But also, schools should also consider different styles of learning. It was pointed out that the top 10 graduates of Middletown High School and Newport Rogers High School, there were 9 girls and 1 boy. So we were just wondering, what is it about the school where girls are just doing better? Anything else? Can anyone think of anything else? We also think that with a bigger school district, students will be able to find other students that they have more common interests in, instead of being alone, just with a greater diversity and greater number of students. Okay.
Thank you.
So for the first question, what do we hope to gain? The first would be 21st century buildings that are energy efficient, to bring strong school communities, better opportunities for all students, more equity. We defined that as more able to meet the needs of individual students. We hope to gain more efficiency of resources, less duplication of effort, and recognition of individual needs. As far as what we hope for academic and extracurricular programs that were not mentioned, universal pre-K, fuller day pre-K and after-school programs, certainly arts expanded, that's a big one. Dual language programs, combine social activities including dances and proms, really have the kids get to know each other, and perhaps more enrichment opportunities such as field trips. So that's what we had on that. And then it's funny, we didn't really come up with many fears, because I think what we were looking at
was impacts on the students' education, and so we were thinking that really it's a positive thing for the students' education to be together, that this could possibly remove some parochialism between our municipalities, that we would involve both communities to build career pathways, that we would actually involve tradesmen to help develop programs. One of the fears we said was the culture of separation will get in the way of success. Another fear was undermining of, I can't read that, I'm sorry, of progress based on previous rejections. And our hope is mutual respect for all families, become a model for future communities, and eliminate white flight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I know who's not speaking at this table, but I don't know who is. Behind you.
So we'll just leave it down here, it's easier. So I'm just going to read the ones we haven't heard. How's that? Okay. So about retaining identities with the two schools, not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We would hope that more kids would feel comfortable going between the schools. They already feel comfortable in many other respects. And they would be encouraged to explore many different career paths by going to both schools. And leveraging economic extracurricular activities for economies of scale. So there could be one robotics team amongst both schools, that kind of thing. Then this one I didn't have to, school night. The community partnerships was a big thing that we discussed. And then our fear, students will be recruited to other programs across town city lines. That's a fear we had. Not as equitable. Will regionalization fully be equitable? Are we perpetuating segregation and discrimination? That was a concern of ours, and that's it. Oh, union contracts. What happens to the current contracts? And RIPTA, maybe this could be a great opportunity to get RIPTA going back and forth for our kids.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so this concludes meeting one. We are actually having a duplicate of this here starting in about 20 minutes. And then we'll be meeting virtually tomorrow evening. Look for a survey. We're pushing out a survey that captures these questions. We would very much encourage you to please take that survey, look for that announcement coming out, pass it on social media. I'm sorry, oh, QR code, of course, sorry. QR code is up here, but we'll push it out as well. If you want to snap the survey link on your way out, I'll leave this up here. Again, pass it around your social media and ask folks to take it. It's being translated into Spanish, I believe, as we speak. And so this link will go to both, and that should be up here momentarily, the Spanish version as well. And then please come to our July meetings. We'll have, as I said, more data, some case studies there, and we'll sink our teeth into a little bit more information. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the beautiful weather. Thanks for coming.
I want to get out from under this microphone and introduce you to Jessica Goodall. Am I saying your last name right? I keep saying it. I've said it 5 different times, I think. But Jessica is from Woolport Strategies, and David Sturts from Cooperative Strategies, Woolport, just Woolport. And then David Sturts from Cooperative Strategies, and they're going to walk you through some slides and then tell you how we wish to proceed this evening, just to have a decent discussion amongst all of you about the topic at hand. So, Jessica, you want to take it from here? Superintendent Krager had to leave as well, and I know there were a number of school committee personnel here earlier, as well as city council people, and a lot of you that I didn't know, but some of you I probably know this evening. And Colleen Germain, the superintendent, is doing double duty as well. We didn't have an excuse of a budget tonight. We should have held off Colleen. So I'd like to introduce you all to Jessica. She's going to walk you through some of the preliminaries, and then David will take over from there. And again, thanks all for coming.
Oh yeah, on is good. There we go. Good evening. My name is Jessica, and so I'm going to quickly go through our agenda and what's going to be happening tonight. The idea tonight is not for the consultants to get up and speak a lot. The idea is for you guys to converse and have a sharing of ideas and to share that out with the group. So we'll do quick introductions. I'll go over a quick slide about what is regionalization. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. What are the benefits? What's the goal of our overall process? Kind of why are David and I here? David's going to go over that, potential cost savings, and then how we're going to proceed tonight is going to be primarily in small group discussions, and then we'll touch a little bit on next steps. David will talk on that a little bit. So my name's Jessica. I'm with Woolpert. I'm the Director of Portfolio Optimization, so I help clients across the country manage their facilities better. I do a lot of condition assessments. I did a statewide assessment here for all the schools in the state of Rhode Island back in 2016, 2017. David and his team were on that project as well. David's a director at Cooperative Strategies, and he's a K-12 master planner, so he helps school districts across the country pass bond programs and plan their schools and education programs. We put together a steering committee for this actual regionalization project, so we've got the members from Newport and Middletown, building committees, superintendents. I probably forget a lot. There's a lot of people on my phone call. So we have representatives from both sides on that, and they've been steering this process. We also have support from the Annenberg Institute, where they've been providing input on educational processes. Jonathan Collins was here earlier, and he's into demographics and the democratic process. And so they're kind of studying us and also providing input along the way as well. So what is regionalization? Simply put, it's the combining of your two school districts. Here we're to talk about really combining your administrative processes and figuring out how that's going to work best for you. I want to emphasize that we're very early on in the process. The legislation has been put in place at the state to be reviewed by the state. We're here today, and it's very early in the process. You haven't missed anything. So we're at the point where we're gathering information, we're doing studies, those sorts of things, and we're really moving towards the November 8th election where the community gets to vote on whether this is a good idea and something they support or not. And assuming that goes through and this has the community support, you'll vote on a school committee next November, and then the following year would be the first day of business for this new regionalized school district. So it's a pretty long process, and we're early on in the phase, so we're just starting these analyses and these data gathering processes. Ultimately, the goal of this regionalization is to benefit the students, to give them more programs, more opportunities, those efficiencies and cost savings that we can get from combining some administrative functions as well as additional funding from the state. The whole emphasis is on returning those savings back into the school and having better education and more opportunities for students. Now I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you, Jessica. Again, my name is David Sturts with Cooperative Strategies, and I'm going to just go over about 10 minutes worth of presentation on the process and what we have done, what we are in the process of doing, and then push to what we're actually going to do this evening. So what are we doing in this study and why? Well, this process of regionalization, studying it, came into being because the cities, the towns got together and looked at how can we better resource our kids' education, both the structures they're in and the operating day-to-day. So there's two considerations in education, two funding streams: your capital, which builds your buildings, and your operating, which funds your instructors and and all of the day-to-day expenses, right? And in looking at the preliminary review of districts of a similar size, as what a regionalized Newport Middletown would look like, there was a promise of operational savings, and there is a certainty of statewide capital investment that would provide outsized resources for your building program. So with those two sort of preliminary data sets in mind, knowing that this conversation has been a long time coming, we were retained, Jessica and our teams, to do a study because anything that human beings do can be done well, it can be done poorly, so let's learn from where it has been done before, let's pick out the gems, let's avoid the landmines, let's identify those. So this study, our role is going to start with looking at case studies, highlighting lessons that we can learn from other regionalizations, yes, here in Rhode Island, but also across the country. Right? What has worked well? What are some common challenges? How should we be considerate of those moving forward? Secondly, to look at the finances, the operations of both districts as they are now, and look at, as a regionalized school district, where are there probable redundancies and opportunities for savings? And these savings then in education, for those of you familiar with education, you know, separating the money conversation, the academic conversation is something of a false dichotomy. That money is there to fund your teachers, fund your students, fund your programs, fund all that. So the operational savings, how do we look at academic and extracurricular opportunities to best serve our kids from that? So that's what we're going to look at. We have a former retired CFO from a large school district I've worked with for years who's studying the finances. We have a retired superintendent who has been a principal teacher superintendent who's studying the academic programs opportunities and is going to come at the end of July to these meetings with the preliminary findings from their studies. Along the way, we are going to have 3 rounds of engagement. At the end of tonight, I'm going to put up a QR code. This is going to link to a survey. On that survey, in the header, the intro of that survey, there is a link to the project website that has the meeting dates, it has the links to the surveys, and key information on it. I'd highly encourage you to snap that QR code at the end of the meeting, take the survey, pass it on, and come to these next rounds of meetings. The first round here in June, as we are starting these studies, and they're underway, they're not completed at this point, is to mainly introduce the process, the why we're here, and to get some feedback from you all on what should we solve for the students, on the students' perspective, for the students' benefit. We're going to have 3 related questions at the end that we're going to ask you to try to come to a consensus answer on as a table. That will help us provide guideposts. The first group did it. Second, tonight we'll do it. We have a virtual meeting in Spanish tomorrow night. We'll do the same thing. Then in July, we're going to come back with these case studies, with some of these analyses, academic and financial. Share that data with you. Share the feedback we got from this meeting, these meetings, and the surveys, and then start to have the next conversation of the data shows us where we are, the survey shows us where we want to go. How do we go from A to B? That's some of the questions in the round 2 in July. And in round 3, we are going to come back with some draft considerations for the towns in considering how regionalization could be beneficial and what are some challenges that could come up along the way and how to look out for them and avoid them. Get your feedback on that. That's the end of this process. So June, visioning, July, preliminary data, August, draft considerations. The outcome of this report will be guideposts, considerations, and data and analyses, survey feedback for the towns to consider, assuming regionalization would pass. What it is not the plan. It's not going to say, move this boundary, change this program, get rid of this, position. That would premature. Our job, our best resource here, value, is doing that data mining, doing those analyses, doing those studies, and providing guidance for the administrations to best navigate this decision for their communities rather than trying to do it sort of prematurely as some outside group. All right, so we're looking at program management, business operations, and general administration, the nuts and the bolts. What are some opportunities therein to gain efficiencies at the admin that goes into the classroom? I worked with one district in some extreme rural challenge area one time up in Alaska, and I'll never forget this. And they were saying, they squeeze every dollar we can out of the operation because every dollar we save in the ops goes right into the classroom, and they knew it was limited, and that stuck with me, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Operations, looking at the building upkeep, utilities, maintenance, transportation, all of how the buildings and the capital program operate. Data and technology management. Just overall, when you look at it, greater economy of scale as a merged district, what can you do differently that can allow you to put more money back into the classroom? Now, that's on the operating side. On the state side, what we're looking at here is structures that are set in place by the state to incentivize what was called newer, fewer back in the master plan in 2016-17. In Rhode Island, when we were doing the study, at the time you had 37 districts, I think, now you're 35. You had tons of schools and lots of districts, very, very small, spreading that limited pie in many slices, right? So that what was looked at here is how do we incentivize some consolidations of resources for the benefit of our students. So we've got a base share from the state on capital programs. And then on top of that, there's these bonuses for efficiencies and newer and fewer and educational enhancements, health and safety. But on top of that is a regionalization bonus. So what you're talking about is the potential for about 80 cents on the dollar worth of reimbursement from the state for major capital programs. And we'll have specific numbers coming on some analyses of what that could look like. But the short answer is it is 80 cents on the dollar as a potential, as a upper bounds here that you could work towards to get reimbursement for your capital programs, which any way that you slice it between both towns is a significant amount of money that can have significant impact on your capital programs. And for Newport in brief, for example, with the Rogers program being funded, there with that money coming back from the state to help essentially you be paying what you're paying now, but you're getting more aid from the state. So what do you do with that aid? That's an opportunity. In Middletown, you look at the opportunity to do major work on your buildings as opposed to minor, sort of building for the decades as opposed to, the repairs kinds of approach. What could you gain academically if you could rebuild more buildings rather than just fix them? Think pre-K preparedness, universal pre-K. Almost every state that I work in is right now districts. There's two things that they're always looking at: career tech. We got to get career tech programs up and job ready, and pre-K. We need to prepare for universal pre-K because everybody knows the benefits of that. So thinking about the future opportunities for our capital program to invest in and support our academic and extracurricular priorities, we're going to ask you to define what those are to you tonight in part. But knowing that some of this regionalization bonus, while it is, in effect, in perpetuity, there is a one-time bonus here that does cut out over in the next few years. And again, we'll have that mapped out more fully all in July. But there is a carpe diem here. There's a seize the moment opportunity in a regionalization to take advantage of even more state dollars for your capital program. And without getting into all of the nuances here on how sort of the general expenses were spent between the districts and relative to the state, just know overall what we're looking at here is that you would, in the combined there, have savings. At minimum, you're going to be consolidating some top-level positions, right? And then from there, looking at how do we maximize putting the dollars in the state back into the school. None of the operating decisions, of course, can be set in stone. The capital programs are much easier to measure. This is the people side. How can we structure the districts to best to support the kids and put the most money as we can into the classroom? So we're going to ask, looking at potential educational opportunities is what we're looking at right now. Like I said, my former superintendent's looking at that, and our CFO. Evaluating best practices, identifying learning priorities, and we're going to ask you to help with that. So here's how we want to structure this evening's meeting, how we did it this afternoon. We're going to ask you to get in small groups of 4 to 6 and ask that at least sit at a table where you don't know at least 2 people. Split yourself up a little bit, because if you came in with the same crowd that you've always talked to, you're going to have the same conversations. We want to have some intentional diversity around the table, and so I'm not going to make people count, but self-select, please, into groups at tables of 4 to 6. And we're going to ask you to answer these 3 questions. Now, in fairness, these 3 questions have some significant overlap, and that's fine. But answer them as best you can, come to consensus responses on this. And the way I explained it is, essentially, what are you hoping could be gained for the students? The second question is, in particular, are there academic programs and extracurricular opportunities that you think of when you answer that question? And the third question is really, what, broadly speaking, what are your hopes and what are your fears? That's the broadly speaking number 3, right, as it comes to this. And everybody knows that the answer to number 3 in part is we could do this well or we could do this poorly. And so, yes, so what are the guideposts that you're looking at as a community member, as a stakeholder here, to how this can be done well? We'll take a good hour or so for this conversation. We don't want to rush it. And as we do that, Jessica and I and some others are going to float around to a few tables. We're going to be listening in and hearing some questions. And before we do the sort of report out for everybody at the end, we'll sort of state any, answer any questions that we're hearing commonly amongst the tables, make sure we get that addressed. And then we'll do a brief report out at each table, and we'll be done. That's our meeting. It'll be the same format, different data when we meet in July and August. Okay? Sir.
So I understand the focus and the next steps. I'm very interested in it. Is there going to be a broader discussion? I know that in your primary statements you said we're at the beginning.
Yes, sir.
There's a fair amount of information that's kind of falling out there.
Sure.
That says certain determining factors have already been established, right? I don't know if there's this. I don't know if we're going to have an opportunity to address any of that, because if there are real biases, right, if there are real delimiters in this conversation, it would be hugely helpful for the dream exercise to know the real.
So, as somebody who's involved in this process, at this point, I think the best way to address that is let's embed at the tables. Let's get these questions out. What we want to do is we want to set the table literally for some long-form discussion like this. We'll pop out and address these questions as we go. As there are common themes, I could interrupt us briefly and address them, but I do want to get us started on them. We were not given any swim lanes parameters that thou shalt stay within in terms of developing options. Our charge has been very broad, and that is find out where this has gone well and not, and what can we learn from it. Analyze our finances and our academic programs to see where there are opportunities in regionalization, and academically and operationally, and then get feedback from the community along the way. 1, on what the vision is, 2, on what the data is showing, and 3, on what some considerations are, June, July, August. So that's it in terms of sort of hard and fast. But we're going to get to that small group. We have the flip charts, which the large stickies that we're going to bring around the tables. So please get into groups of about 4 to 6 as we go here. We'll take a good hour. It is now 6:26. By my watch, we'll convene by 7:30 and report out. Is there a process question?
Just to clarify, this is a conditional, so if regionalization happens, what?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Right. This is a hypothetical. Right. So this is looking ahead in November. If regionalization is passed by the voters, what do you hope could be gained from students, programs, and so on and so forth? I breezed on this one. This is a stacked bar chart which shows a percentage of a budget. It doesn't show what the budget is. Right. So, yeah, so this is showing a current state, and it does not show what could be. So I'm going to take the mic with me for a second. Now I'm just going to use my teacher voice. So this is just showing what the current is right now as a combined. It's not showing what you could gain through some consolidations of positions in resources and that kind of thing. So this is very high level. It is very much just showing if you add these two together, what is the average between the two at the current state, and what in essence our financial analysis is going to do is say, how could we differ from the baseline as a combined district to put more money in the classroom? That's the sort of the answer the question that we're answering. And we got questions popping up, so we'll be really quick, but go ahead and, I'm sorry, you were first and then here.
So I just have a quick question because as a voter, you said this process is going to take 3 months and I work in this industry as well and that seems like a very, very tight thing. So I don't know if this is a question for the local leadership here who what will be on our ballot in November, because what essentially we all are going to be asked to vote on is something which you just admitted there is no plan for it yet. So what exactly are we going to be agreeing to move forward to if what you're providing is just a set of data?
So let me clarify. Our job is to provide a study. Where has this been done? Where has it been done? Where has it been done well? Where has it been done poorly? That's one question that we're answering. The second study question that we're answering is, given your current financial arrangements between the two districts, if we combine as one, where are some opportunities to gain your efficiencies there? Where are some opportunities for the academic program? This is, in essence, the vote in November is, should we be one district or two based upon two considerations? One, the capital incentives from the state, which provide significant monies to majorly rebuild schools, much more than simply repairing them, and sort of that capital incentive. And two, on probable operational savings, which you could look at between the two, at least eliminating some positions, and we're going to provide some data on that. We're just starting that study. What we're not doing is we are not giving a thou shalt. By November, we're not saying this new district will lose this position and lose that position, and these will combine, and blah, 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 blah. We're giving the guideposts and the analyses and the considerations and for moving forward in a thoughtful manner for those elected officials and administrators to use to the best benefit of their community and the stakeholders between the election and July 1, 2024. So we're giving the analyses and data. We're not providing the thou shalt. The vote would be, do you believe that this opportunity for regionalization, given what it brings to our building opportunities for our school buildings and to the students themselves, are those benefits beneficial enough for us to say, yes, we want them? How that's done is up to those who you will elect in a new school board and to the administration that would work for that new school board. And that's their prerogative, okay? It's not our prerogative as outside consultants. It's our job to arm them. And then one question, then we're going to go to small groups.
My question revolves around the main concept of why does the state of Rhode Island want the school districts to combine? And I ask that because I've been sold for my local representatives, we're going to get 80 cents on the dollar, we're going to get this big paycheck, we're going to drop the tax roll, which, okay, that's fine. I can see the chart. However, I thought I might have heard the illusion or the introduction that 80 cents on the dollar is not forever. There is a short window after you combine.
So the 80 cents, what you're looking at is 80 cents will eventually sunset to 67, right? But that the this is you take advantage of that and you're locking. You got that, right? So it's a matter if you're looking at the regionalization, and Joe, or if you want to step in on this, but that is how it's currently on the books, right? And the exact sunset here, we're talking within a couple years' time, and I'll get the exacts. We got to model that out more. But it will go down some, but you'll still have it, right? And so what you're looking at is in the short term. Here's your series of ifs, right? If regionalization passes, and you look to do a major capital program to take advantage of that in the shorter term after regionalization would be approved, then you're looking at the opportunity to take advantage of a larger regionalization bonus. This one will be there, right? But that's the short. So yes, there are absolute capital incentives, and the rationale behind the state to do that, and I work in a lot of states, is when looking at how the state funds their capital program, it's how thin do we spread our dollar, and if we can create some incentives where we have a lot of school districts operating in a small area, and therefore a lot of schools, when you're looking at your capital program, there are opportunities, for example, and I'm going to get into the weeds and I'm going to shut up, I promise. A lot of schools are built in the 50s. Those schools were built with smaller capacities than we build schools today. One of the main reasons is those small capacities were because you had a very basic program relative to today's standards. You didn't need as many kids to fund the program. Today we have our wraparound services, special education services, intervention services, and that just takes more funds. And so you need more kids for a school to operate it and fully fund what we offer today as a comprehensive education. And that is straining our buildings and constraining our ability to sustain in education writ large, our programs. And so looking at moving to, when you rebuild schools, if you rebuild schools to be sustainable from a capacity standpoint, you are going to, in effect, have a fewer buildings than you had. They will be newer. So you have less buildings in the long run, they are more efficient in the long run, and they are able to operationally sustain a comprehensive program. So the question as to why, that's sort of the long arc that we set in the 2016 plan, was to aim your long-term investments in that direction, because these buildings are going to be here for 100 years. So that's the why. I want to start now. I do want to get to our small groups, and we will come back. We are going to float around and pick up any other questions that feed off of this and address them before we do our report out. But I want to make sure we get to our report out, our small groups. So please go to find a table where you have some new faces. I'd like groups of minimum of 4, please. I see several groups of 3. Find a buddy. And if you're in a group of 6 or more, let's see if you can find some new friends. All right, so we're going to take a few minutes, and I'm going to wander around with this mic, and if we could have one volunteer at the table. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to start here, and I'm going to walk around the room clockwise fashion. And I'm going to ask to kind of keep it to the 2-minute summary of the highlights of your conversation. We have all of the details in here. We have the notes from the previous meeting right there behind Jessica. What we're going to do at the end of this meeting, for your knowledge, is put them up on the walls back there, snap pictures of them. They're going to go into our report, which we can come back and show you some of the outputs of that at the end of July. Also going to move my water bottle so you can read this. When done with the whip around here and the report out, put up a QR code showed the next steps, put up a QR code to the survey. That survey is live. It's also, it should be done by end of today, knock on wood, on getting it fully translated. So that link will go to English and Spanish translation. The link also, you go to the survey, the beginning of the survey shows the link to the project website, which is Middletown-Newport.us. That shows the meeting dates coming up, and that's our landing page here. Yeah, we're going to post everything up as we go here. So we have the survey up there now. We'll get the presentations up. I believe is that part of? I think we got that. That's standard process. Yeah. Yeah, if it's not done now, it'll get done. That's our standard procedure. Okay. So we typically put the presentations up after we're done with all the in-person meetings. So let's start right here, and I'll hold up the papers, and if somebody could volunteer or be volunteered to give your 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone. We had a good group. 7 people, I think 4 Middletown, 3 Newport. And so we talked through stuff. I'm going to go quick through the top stuff because it's kind of what most have, and maybe the questions at the end will work best. So what do we want to get out of this? Gain for the students, better physical facilities. Okay, and I think we all know that. We want, and this was probably more at the core of what we talked about, and we had pretty general agreement across, mutual acceptance of students and families, so students and families will know and understand each other. Demographics leading to, based on equity and equality, okay? Continued and expanded academic opportunities, that's a basic. Diversity, that's a plus, that's what we want to improve. Combined schools, I know the current plan doesn't call for that, but if it leads to that, I think we're all better off. Our group thought that. Improved academic standing of the Newport and Middletown schools. Better vocational opportunities. We know that. I didn't finish that one. Oh, there was something about discipline, but I didn't even finish that writing out there. Lower administrative costs, that's kind of the basic of the whole thing. Personnel and operations, we might get some economies of scale on, and eventually maybe schools. Tax relief for citizens, and pre-K, that's a big one. I think that's coming down the pike for everyone, so be in a position to quickly implement that. Question 2, additional academic extracurricular programs, languages, honors and AP, be able to combine the schools, whether we do it virtually or bring kids from one school to the other or put them in the single school, but more opportunities for things like that where you don't have a big enough enrollment with just one of the schools. Greater attention to social emotional learning, more social workers. Obviously, that's a big challenge in all the schools these days. Arts, music, dance, theater, traditional art, that kind of stuff. Vocational, that kind of goes along with what we had up above, but basically better vocational opportunities. Combined teams, possibly. Some of the individual schools, Middletown can't field a cross-country team ever, but if they combine with Rogers, maybe we could. That's one small advantage. But there'd be a lot of other teams that would benefit from that too, and drama. Number 3, impacts on students' education. The positive impact of diversity, with the understanding that that's a two-sided coin. For every positive, there's challenges that go along with it. And so understanding how we look at that. Middletown's got the War College International students and all that feeds into it. Lots of immigrants in the community now, being able to integrate them all amongst our students would be a plus for all the kids. Fears that this could lead to greater segregation. We're building a plan based on keeping the schools separate, and that, until we look at how to better integrate, that we're not going to necessarily get there. The current course could lock us into a two-school model, which misses out on many advantages. I know we're building a new school at Rogers. Middletown has a plan to build a whole new school. So again, are we locking ourselves in with these construction? But I think that train left the station. Improved council and school committee relationships. We can only hope that happens. This is coming from someone in Middletown. Okay, questions. Will the lack of the framework in this lead to voters to vote no? I don't know enough, I'm going to vote no, that kind of thing. So that's a question I got. What details will be disseminated to the public prior to Election Day? That goes along with question 1. What's the deliverable from your contractors? What are you guys going to give at the end of this whole thing? And will the whole citizenry be able to see that and all? And I think the answer is probably yes. But how rigid are the Newport-Middletown boundaries with regard to student school attendance? Are we locking in on the geographic boundaries, or is there some flexibility as we look at the populations of the different feeders? Who/how is the school committee charter being written? Okay, who's going to write it and how are they going to write it as we get to that? That's where the really rubber hits the road on the tough stuff. And where does the rebate money go? Can it be used to pay down bonds? So that was ours.
All right, building our FAQs. Thank you. In brief, a real one I can answer real quick because rather than go down the whole list. On what we're delivering from our team, Jessica and I, we're going to deliver a report of considerations for best practices or good practices. Best practices is overused in consulting, but good ideas, good lessons learned from other consolidations around the country, looking at your finances, looking at the academic opportunities, considerations for how to maximize the opportunities, all things considered for the student academically and funding that operationally. And the feedback that we've gotten from the community at every step, here, what are things to aim for and what are things to avoid? In June, responses to the data and presentations that's being provided at that point with some specific implications that you all think from that data suggests for your communities. Questions that I ask, what do you think does this data means for your capital planning? What do you think this data means for your operational planning? Getting you to essentially answer those questions that go back in the report for the, assuming this would pass, to the committees to be of the regional school district to have as a community voice with data behind it and considerations for how to do it well. Okay, so I will hold this one up. Who's going to speak from this table? Is that you? Got it.
Good luck taking these pictures. I can do it, it's fine. We have some overlap, so we're just going to read what's new. We also didn't go by numbers, we just kind of jumped all over. So we want educational opportunities for all students, and we want to make sure the opportunities do not get siloed into specific schools. We ideally, in our dream world, we would actually like true regionalization, which is, in our minds, one high school. True regionalization, 9 to 12, one building. Education should be the driving factor, not the money saved. Kids and teachers should be first, and we should constantly put the kids first in any plan that goes forward. The kids and their education should be always the #1 goal, and not money. Legislation to earmark the funds go back to the schools. The reimbursement funds should go to the schools, not just go into the general coffers of the cities and towns. Continue to engage in the process that is transparent and not being made by one small handful of people. Let's see. Integrated career and academics in this building so kids can see what all is available in the schools. Visioning process to see if the two communities are even aligned in educational outcomes. We'd like to see more like urban farming, sustainable programs, STEM, STEAM, expand the hyper-focused career programs to cover more general career programs to open up more opportunities, so not so hyper-specific, like have general plumbing, which you could then transfer, or electrical, that you could easily move from like homes to houses to, so you'd open up way more job opportunities and not pigeonhole the kids into one specific field. Happy teachers are happy schools. Social emotional focus, and inclusion, diversity, and opportunities for all with equity in the schools.
Thank you very much. All right, and who is speaking from this? Do you get the opportunity this time because you missed it the last? Oh, okay. You'll do it? Okay. I can hold it up.
All right, so we tried to highlight like our top 3 for each. So for question 1, what would you hope could be gained for students? Increased opportunities, linking education with real jobs, school choice, so will our kids have choice to go to which school? True regionalization that goes beyond just administration. And so that's number 1. Those were our top 3. And then question 2, what additional academic and extracurricular programs are most important to you? And we said combining sports teams. What was that one? Which one's this? The second one. No. Oh yeah, right. So just a bunch of more classes. So we have a big maritime population here. So boat making, marine tech, sailing opportunities, home ec, financial literacy, things like this. And then our last was mimicking something that Westerly does in their NAD Tech career program with electric boat. So. Do you want to? And then the third, what impacts on students' education should be considered? And kind of all of these we thought were important. So how much choice will school committee have? School committee should have control over finances. How will we blend special education department fund? Is the funding different? How will the school department attract more residential children to utilize public versus private schools? And the school should be one school. So separate schools will be equally diverse. Yeah. Yeah. And Mr. Leary would like to share something.
All right, thank you. All right, who's our winner over here?
So I'll just read off what is a little bit different. We agreed with a lot of the comments already said. Some of our wants are around increased opportunities for kids in terms of career pathways, being able to attend either high school based on programming, increased course offerings, being able to bring back programs that have fallen by the wayside due to low enrollment. And I think that really goes both academically as well as athletics and extracurriculars. I think there were some concerns around impacts on student and student identity, especially in Middletown as we think about moving to one large elementary school. Just sort of the social emotional movement of I'm a member of a very small school and now I'm a member of a very big school. I think it leads to one of our questions, which is, are we specifically reaching out to the teachers and trying to make them a part of the conversation? I think, adult culture is super important in having a healthy school. And if we're not involving the teachers in that conversation, we're missing a huge stakeholder. We talked a lot about diversity and equity, training and development in our communities and in our schools. School security and design for new buildings that emphasizes safety and security in our buildings. What else am I missing? I think yeah, and so transportation, and can we save some costs on transportation so that we can have things like junior varsity teams? How are we going to transport kids from one school to another if they're allowed to attend both schools for different programming? It feels like there are a lot of questions that maybe you are not in the position to answer, but that we need our town and city leaders to weigh in on, and so that we can make an educated decision come November. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And our table here. Who are you up? All right.
So we had
a lot of the same concerns going in, and so I'm going to just start out right now with the concerns. Our main concern was this regionalization is really not a true regionalization. So it brings up a lot of things that may be more complicated than others. School segregation, because we're not one unified school district. We're actually running as two separate school districts, but one. Managing information between the schools, how is that going to be done? There really is no plan to vote on, and what makes us think that by the time there is a plan, we can actually vote on. The timeline seems extremely short. A major concern was the special education. Currently, right now, Newport is not in our specialization program for Middletown. How are we going to run as a special ed program and then an education district separately? And staff and teachers. How can we attract new teachers and staff with a regionalization, which really isn't a new regionalization? We need more facts and less fluff. So the question number one, what can be gained? We're excited about a new school committee, new teacher contract, a new administration team that is not impartial. And I think that was really key here. That is impartial. So we really need a new committee and a new administration team that doesn't come from Middletown, does not come from Newport. It's outside. We're excited about new buildings. So that's what can be gained. What's important, we need to focus on academics. There's a lot of talk about finances, not a lot of talk about what actually is academics. What's important, special education. We're looking, and you, David, talked about that. That's a new concern now, and that concerns both school districts, is the special education. There's more resources that need to be allotted for both schools. If it was a true regionalization, I'd be like, this is great, we can pour it in, but we're really not looking at that. But that is important, to look at really the special education piece, which I don't think prior has really been looked at. We would love to see more adaptive programs for students, more needs for sure, as we've come into, we're now 2022. We're operating on a program that was not designed for students of 2022. So the considerations, funding from the state if considered to be one district. We're really concerned because it's really not one district, how those funds are going to be separated and how equally it can be divided so that all students, which that's why we're all here for, is for the students, can make sure that we can meet their needs. So that's what we had discussed.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, thank you. And if I may, a theme that I heard from kind of echoing in every table is, how do we make the most of the potential, because that's what this is, potential for benefit, to maximize that, the academic opportunities for all students, being explicit and careful to not segregate or provide inequitable distribution of resources, but to do the opposite. If we're going to have a bigger pie, let's use it for the benefit of all kids. Let's have a plan to do it. That's a theme that I heard from all tables, and it goes along with the theme from the other groups as well. Let's take advantage. If we're going to do this, take advantage of it the best we can. All of your comments and questions, we're going to snap them up. We're going to put them in our report. We're going to use that again as sort of guideposts for the report to be. And as we look ahead to some of the next steps here, you already did that. Like I said, in July, we're going to come with some more of these analyses, more data, some data to sink your teeth into. We're just getting started. That's in process right now, academically and financially, as well as our case studies. Come, please take a snap of this survey, QR code on your way out. That will go to the survey. Please pass that survey around. On the introduction to that survey is the link to the Middletown-Newport.us website that has these resources, and this presentation will be uploaded to that. Share it on social media, get it out there. The more the merrier. Take this survey, please. And then look to come. You'll see our July meetings posted on that at the end of July. Please come to that. Thank you very much for spending your time with us here this afternoon and evening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If you have questions on the way out or comments, feel free to come talk to us. Thank you very much.
David, do I take a picture with my camera? Or?
Yes, sir. Okay. So what you do is you just walk up right to